Okay, so hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Default Global. This is where we connect with global first entrepreneurs and remote work experts from all around the world. Our guest today is Robin Choy, a co founder and CEO at HireSweet. Robin, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, and I'm very happy to be here. So thanks for inviting me.
Sure. Robin, it is great to have you on the show, frankly speaking. And to kick things off, probably could you please tell us more about your journey from being a Frenchman living in San Francisco to co-founding HireSuite and hosting the A Players podcast?
Yeah, sure. It's actually the opposite. I founded HireSuite to being a Frenchman in San Francisco because I created HireSuite in France, in
Oh,
Paris,
okay.
in
Okay.
2016. And I actually just moved to San Francisco a year ago. So now I live here, but it's only been a year. So yeah, pretty much started HireSuite in 2016 in Paris, fresh out of school, with my two co-founders, Ismail and Paul. The original project was mostly based on Ismail's expertise. He did a lot of competitive programming. He did the international Olympiads in informatics. I didn't know there was such a thing at the time. This was like competitive programming for students and high school students. And so the first product was a software to assess software engineers for companies hiring software engineers. So that was based again on Ismail's expertise. Pretty quickly, we realized, because our clients told us, that the main pain wasn't assessing people, but rather finding people, finding software engineer. And that's interesting because we're like, okay, why don't you just post a job online and wait for people to apply? And we discovered that for a lot of jobs, you can post a job online, cross your finger, and nothing happens. And you can wait for months, you can wait for years, and you won't get anybody. So then you have to resort to being proactive, engaging with candidates yourself, doing the first step. And for us as fresh graduates, that was new. And it's like, okay, what do you mean? Like the candidate is not applying to the company, the candidate is not fighting to get inside the company? No, it's the opposite. Companies are fighting for talent for some people. So that's how we moved on to much before in the recruiting process, and then we moved on to the sourcing part, like how do we generate candidates. So I'll spare you all those 7 years, though I'd be happy to talk to you about what happened in those 7 years. But we launched in the US in 2019, originally from France. Then we went through Y Combinator, which is a big startup accelerator that did Dropbox, Stripe, Airbnb. We went through this in January to March 2020, and that was supposed to be our launchpad to the US. Then pandemic, got back home for the lockdown for 2 years. And now I'm back in the US. I'm back in San Francisco for about a year now. And the product itself changed a lot as well as we evolved and as the market evolved as well, and regulations and clients and candidates. So today we have two main products. The first one is what's called a talent marketplace. So you have to think of it as an automated hiring agency. In the early days at HireSuite, like the first year or 2 years, we were really an hiring agency. So I did spend a lot of time engaging with candidates, engaging with clients, trying to make the match. So the talent marketplace is an evolution of these initial products, just more automation. But there are still people talking to candidates, sourcing candidates, briefing the candidates before the interviews, etc., etc. So that's the talent marketplace, and we charge a placement fee, very similar to hiring agencies. And a second product is what we call HireSuite CRM. It's the software part of everything we learned across those past 7 years. We've always had a big part of our team in the data science and software team. And so we built an automation software to help build talent pool, engage with candidates, nurture candidates, because we realized, and that's back to that learning in 2016, that most companies were equipped with software that allowed them to post a job online and then collect inbound applicants. But today, recruiting for lots of companies and for lots of jobs, it's about being proactive. And the software out there for being proactive is not quite quite advanced because again that's a new trend. So you had to build new software. Some existing vendors try to build features, and some new vendors like ourselves like build the thing from scratch. So yeah, two products: HireSuite Marketplace and HireSuite CRM.
Yeah, and at this point, we can say that HireSuite is a truly international company, right? So, could you share your thoughts as a founder and as a CEO on what it means to be a global first company with a global first mindset? Can you talk more about this?
Yeah, I think this is something that you have to think about from the start. Even when we were just the three of us, when you create a company, you have to write a contract between co-founders to say, okay, uh, this is what we're going after, and you have to put it in the clearest writing possible. And we actually had this. We had a document where we said, okay, this is what success looks like for us. So there were revenue milestones, there were global expansion milestones, there were team milestones, and there were like a more philosophical things like we want to keep investing in the data science and software. And so the global expansion from the first day, we're like, okay, we want a product that we can sell to any country. And very early on, we expanded to other countries. Even though we stayed in France mostly, we started selling to the UK, to Europe, and to the US, obviously, and then US North America. So that would be US, Canada, and we had at some point clients in Mexico as well.
Yeah, and so you relocated to San Francisco while your entire team is based in France, right?
That's
So,
correct.
yeah, I assume the main strategic element that influenced this decision was just business expansion to the US market, right? So, could you maybe share some of the challenges you have faced during this transition, right? How difficult it is to expand from the French market to the US market while your team is still in France, you know?
Yeah. So the usual playbook for companies expanding abroad is like you raised a huge round, then you invest 20 million in a course of 2 years. This is not enough time. So, and we've seen so many companies do it. Some companies succeed, but a lot of companies are just like, okay, this didn't work, and then they stop everything, lay off everybody, and go back home. We wanted to do the opposite. We wanted to be persistent and and playing the long term game. So the goal was that's also why we went to YC in 2020. Immediately after YC, I started creating more content, tailored to the international audience, so not only US but international. So writing in English and inviting people from on the podcast. So there's a lot of people from here, from the Bay Area, and the goal was like, okay, we're not here. Whatever happens, we're staying here. So that's also a strong vote of confidence to say that the CEO is moving here. Whatever happens, we're staying here, and we want to play the long term game. Um, and obviously, this comes with a lot of challenges, which means we couldn't afford to bring a lot of people from the team. The goal is still to build a team here as we grow our revenue, and we still have a lot of cash in bank as well. So the goal is to grow here, but to grow like, okay, we're gonna stay here, whatever. So we want to do it consciously and gradually, and not like invest 20 million, hire a ton of people we don't understand anything about the market or the clients, and then leave after 2 years. So that's kind of a bit of a contrarian playbook. Um, Came with a lot of challenges. Obviously, how do I create a brand for myself here? How do I open doors? And it's been, I would say that it takes time anyway. It doesn't take money, so that's why I'm not surprised that so many people can spend and burn through that much money, because just takes time to build credibility. So you, same as you do, right? You get people on the podcast, you grow your network, you go to events, you meet people, you show that you're an actual human and not just someone on LinkedIn, and not just someone blasting with yet another software. So it takes a lot of time to build credibility, and this time can be bought to some extent with money, but mostly but mostly it's really time. Um, so yeah, that's what we did, and the plan is to keep on growing like this.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I guess we're very similar to you at GoGobi here because our founders are in one time zone while the majority of our core team is in another, right? And it's pretty, frankly speaking, it's pretty rare structure. Usually, the core team and the founders are in the same time zone. But so with that, I guess I know exactly what challenges you're probably facing. But still, I would like to ask this one: how do you, or maybe not, have you noticed any significant cultural impacts, right, on workflow or team dynamics? Being in different time zones, different continents, even.
Sure, absolutely. So we're 9 hours apart with France. So that means I have about a 2 to 3 hours overlay every morning. And then I go on to my day, and then everybody stops working in France. So that's also why I usually wake up that early. It's 7 a.m. for me, but that's not unusual. Um, so we had to adjust. Initially, it's a bit difficult because then if you have a meeting on Monday and then for whatever reason you need to cancel, then that can be moved to Friday very quickly. So we moved on to very much more asynchronous communication using text. That's something we already did, but we did more of this using text, using screen recordings with tools like Clap or Loom, and yeah, much more clarity to set objectives, set targets, set reporting, so that everybody knows what to do during the day. Even if I'm not responsive, they know how to move forward. Um, we also so that were the processes that we changed, and then we also changed the team itself to have more leaders in the team that were empowered to make their own decisions. So we promoted someone internally to be a head of marketplace. So the first product that I mentioned is now headed by one person, and that person is CEO of the marketplace. He's operating everything, he's managing the team, he's making his own decisions. And we're more, I sometimes consider myself as an investor, as a very heavily weighted investor in the marketplace, but my role is to help that person so that the marketplace performs to the best as possible, but it's still that person's responsibility. So I would say we change both our processes and the team and the way we worked with the team down to like titles and responsibilities.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Another thing that I would like to talk with you about these changes that happened recently, that we probably also maybe you noticed some shift in the hiring game lately, right? Especially in the tech space. So, for example, at GoGobi, we're seeing it's becoming like a more, let's say, way easier for companies to hire
Mm-hmm.
talent, right? Both locally
Mm-hmm.
and globally. Simply, there are more applicants right there. So, are you feeling this vibes too? And what's your take on the current state of hiring in the tech world specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. There are more applicants, and each applicant applies to more jobs. And we see our clients and people in the industry telling about how many applications are clearly generated by AI, and there are tools that help applicants send like 200 custom and somehow personalized applications. So yeah, the number of applications have definitely increased. It's and strangely, it still is hard for companies to hire top talent. So we see companies struggling to manage their inbound volume, and then they're like, okay, there is we still need to do outbound, and we still need to go proactively after talent. So yes, the market has shifted for sure. There is a lot of very good, high quality talent on the market. So as a company, that's probably one of the best time to be over the past 7 to 10 years. But then companies cannot hire as much as they used to, so they have to hire more slowly. So overall, they'll still need to up their game and just like pick the best person they can. And they absolutely want to do this. Another thing that we see is there's less urgency as well. We used to, like, every client is probably the same for you. every client was like, okay, we need to fill those roles for yesterday. We need to hire 30 software engineers for a year ago. Now it's more like we need to hire 10 software engineers, not 30 anymore. And, we're not in a hurry, so we'll just hire the right person when they come up. And if it takes 2 years, then never mind. That's not that big of a problem. The main problem is to keep profitability. So that absolutely changed. And then for the entire market overall, like unemployment rates are still pretty low in the US and like everywhere in the world. So that we have that kind of very strange situation where we feel that from the trenches and from the from the market, we see that people are struggling to find jobs in some industries, like talent acquisition, for instance. We've had, I don't know, maybe 10 to 30% layoffs. We've seen layoffs across the clients. And these people, even like the best of them, are struggling to find jobs. And that's surprising. But at the same time, unemployment rates remain low, and some industries are hiring like never before in healthcare, construction, industrial. There are lots of companies still hiring very much. So I would say it's a very weird market that we didn't experience for sure for the first 6 years here at HireSuite, but it's an interesting one. And that also requires everybody to adapt, both the players like talent acquisition teams. They need to step up, they need to be better, they need to add value beyond simply recruiting, but also the software vendors that need to build new features, the companies themselves, the investors, they need to change their mindset towards recruiting.
Hmm.
So everybody is changing fast.
Yeah, and speaking of this adaptation, right? So, with all this shifts that is happening, has this shaken up how you're doing business? Like you guys are thinking your business model, or are you pretty much staying the course?
Oh yeah, absolutely. We had to change everything, and anybody working in recruiting that says that they stayed the course uh, is either lying or going straight into a wall. So we changed our pricing. We changed our pricing to be much more aggressive and competitive on the marketplace. We reduced our pricing by more than 30%. So that's huge. We had to step up our sales game as well on the CRM to be better, to be more aggressive with our competitors, to be more persistent with our clients, to be better at showcasing the value as well. So build ROIs and business cases. So we needed to change everything, and then and that's also something that everybody sees on the market right now. It's harder to talk to clients, um, and that I'm not quite sure that's because of the market, but that's a big trend that we've seen across the past 7 years. Initially, we used to do a lot of cold outbounds. We used to send a lot of cold messages, somehow personalized, but not even that much. And we had a pretty good reply rate to this. And now we still do outbounds, but it's we have much lower reply rates, and everybody's struggling to get replies because, like, a company today hiring gets 20 messages from recruiters or recruiting software every day. So how do you set apart from the competition? And for us, it's been a lot about the content. So those two podcasts, there's one. So it's no longer called A Players since this week. It's called The Modern Recruiter now. So that's the announcement, though I announced it yesterday or
Okay,
the
didn't
day
know that.
before.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, we have one in French as well. We do a lot of webinars. I post a lot on LinkedIn on recruiting, on how to be a better recruiter from what I see from our experiences at HireSuite, with like being a recruiter in the first place and creating HireSuite Marketplace and then managing HireSuite Marketplace, but also from our clients and people we have on the podcast. So it's all this content that helps us build some credibility. And I think most of the HireSuite brand today is known by the content and the LinkedIn content, especially. And the goal for us is to make content that is free, but is so good that people would pay for it. That's how we know we're on the right track. And so it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time, but that's what you have to do in that market to fight. Because if you just keep on doing cold email, that doesn't work. And I'm sure you reached the same conclusion because that's probably
Yeah,
also why you launched the podcast.
100%. 100%. That's true. That's true. And just to summarize, as you said, in in this uncertain economic times, right, such the as the recent downturn, what advice would you give, like, to maybe recruiters who were impacted significantly? Maybe just top two, top three things.
Um, that's the questions I've had a lot recently. I think the number one thing is, first, do you absolutely want to stay in recruiting? Because that's one of probably the worst place to be right now. So if you want to change industries, that could be a good time to do it. And there's no shame in it. And then you can learn things from like being a sales person or working in marketing or whatever, our customer support. There's lots to learn that can be then applicable to recruiting. So that would be the number one thing. If you do want to stay in recruiting, this is gonna be tough, but it will work out in the end. And we see a lot of people finding jobs, obviously. So it's not it's far from being impossible. It just takes a lot of work. And and then the third thing would be, in order to fight, so same for companies that need to fight to get their clients attention. If you want to get the company's attention in a competitive market, you have to understand what are your competitive advantages. That's obvious. And one of the biggest competitive advantage that you can create is invest in your content and your brand. And so start sharing your expertise, start taking part to podcasts and events, because that's how you build a competitive advantage and how you set yourself apart from the competition.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And like you also mentioned this, there are a lot of tech professionals, right, from emerging in local markets, right, who are looking like for this next move in terms of their career, right? And if we're talking about emerging markets, right, they're looking for those startups in Silicon Valley, in the UK, in France, that they really want to join, right? So with that, what advice can you offer to those talent, maybe tech talent specifically, on how they can position themselves to join global companies, especially in this market?
You mean working remotely, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Um, this is going to be much harder than a year ago or 2 years ago, because companies are now cutting down on remote work. They want everybody back to the office, so it's harder. Companies have a lot of biases and prejudices, especially when it comes to foreign talent. And they are always convinced that their country is the best and that their engineers are the best. So you have to acknowledge those biases and then understand how to fight them. So sometimes it's applying to a company where the founder comes from the same country than you, because obviously that person won't have the same prejudices. Sometimes it's building your own personal brand as well to show your worth. I don't know, winning competition, displaying your work online, your portfolio, your previous achievements. That's that can be done, but you have to acknowledge those biases and acknowledge that it's harder to do now. So you have to diffuse potential risks for the company um, early on. Like you have to show that you know how to work remotely, that you work for like big companies remotely. You have to show your work, you have to show blah blah blah. If this is your first job, well, I don't know what you think, but I wouldn't recommend someone to look for as a first job to a remote company. So it's gonna be super
Yeah, I
difficult,
agree.
and
I
you
agree.
have to build your brand first.
100% agree with that. So, Robin, probably my final question to you: could you share any future plans for HireSuite?
Sure. So the first plan is to keep on fighting through that economy for now, and I think it should be the goal for every recruiting company. This is not
Yeah,
a
it's a good
market.
start.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. This is not a market where you're gonna be thriving. You have to fight and survive first. So that's what we're focusing on. Doesn't mean that you do like that you need to cut your costs, all like cut all your costs, and then just hunker down and do nothing for 2 years. Quite the opposite. This is also an opportunity to create new features, to adapt faster than your competitors to the market, and that's what we want to do as well. So we're staying very close to our clients, and we're going to survive by getting more clients and getting our current clients happier. So I would say that the short-term vision for the next 6 months is survive, uh, get more clients, and stay very, very close to the market. A month ago, I made a post on LinkedIn to invite people to connect with me and have casual chats. And I chatted to more than 20 people over the course of 3 weeks with no agenda at all. Um, Other than getting the pulse from the market and saying, okay, what are your issues? So every time I would brainstorm with a person on their issues and give some hints or pointers or resources that I thought would be interesting. And for me, the main learning is, okay, what does the market need right now? What's important to the market? What are the issues that recruiters see today? I'm going to keep on doing this. I already made a new post yesterday. So I got like, again, more than 20 people to talk to. And I'll try and do this every week, talk to the market. And the reason why we're doing this is because if we talk to our clients, we only talk to a subset of the market. We want to talk to everybody, understand what the market needs. So that's the vision for the next 6 months. And then longer term, while the vision remains the same, there is so much to do in recruiting, to provide a better candidate experience, to provide more automation for recruiters. Lots of recruiting teams are still spending time on a very tedious work. And I'm not even talking about generative AI. Generative AI can help, and we're using a lot of that technology in our products as well. But even like more basic stuff, like lots of recruiting teams still use spreadsheets to manage their candidates when they need to be proactive. Like they have no way to follow up automatically. Every time they open up a new job, they just go on LinkedIn and try and find new people instead of searching inside their existing talent pool. They do nothing to nurture their talent pools because their databases are a mess. So there are a lot of problems that we need to solve. So that's for the longer term. But then among those problems, how do we prioritize? That's by talking to the market. So that's our vision, at least.
Yeah, I guess it's a very good plan. Okay, Robin, I guess we're good. So thanks a lot for sharing your insights on this business expansion from France to the US, right? On how to build a global first company and how to navigate this economic downturns, right? So we wish you and HireSuite all the best in your journey. Thanks a lot for your time today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Vit.